covering what you've just said as well. I think it's giving people the breathing room and be able to do more choice. And I think that then comes on to the next topic, which is universal credit, which we wanted to discuss as well. Now, I'm not necessarily going to get into it too much because I don't know a great deal about it, and this is why we've got yourselves on here to give us your, I suppose, expert views on it. Is it a good thing or a bad thing for the housing industry?
Oh. there are many. Yes. There are many who don't like it, and one of the principal reasons they don't like it is because you're actually now passing the financial aspect of rental to the individual, and we all know in our lives we have different pressures, different drivers, different desires. So now, if the money is in our hands, we can choose what to do with it. Now, if we choose to pay the rent, that's fantastic.
Yep.
If we don't, then suddenly there's a credit control issue. That's something that didn't exist pre-universal credit. It used to be that for the vast majority of benefit payments, a payment would come, for example, from the council. And financially, a housing association wouldn't need to worry about it. So from that point of view, it's a real concern to housing associations who are going to have to, dare I say, act far more commercially, like many other private organisations, in the way in which they have to collect money. Mm-hmm. On the flip side, if you look at the pure benefit of universal credit, what you have is often you can have individuals who have just not been used to managing their finances. They haven't needed to. But those individuals have struggled with various other things in life as well because they've never been trained and taught and encouraged to manage finances. So in doing so, universal credit opens up a whole skill area, if you like, for these kind of individuals, whilst also providing many other benefits associated with being able to roll out something at a flick of a switch rather than slowly around the country, from Brighton to Newcastle, over an extended period of time. Something that can be accessed just as easily by someone who's disabled, for example, as someone who's able-bodied. Something that it can again be handled in any language.
Paul, I mean, what do you have to add to that as well? Because I think there's not one clear answer, is there, to this? That's the thing.
No, I don't. Regardless of the technology that's used to deliver UC, within housing associations, inevitably they are going to be pursuing debts, probably from people who can least afford it. So the way that housing associations usually deal with that is to either incentivize people to pay, so giving them a higher standing, so that when they get a choice-based letting system, they can have a greater chance of getting the properties they want, or some other kind of bonuses for paying on time, but also helping the people that do fall behind. And again, that involves using technology to enable income collection people to go out in the field, or going back to actually face-to-face, but doing repayment agreements with people, making an assessment of what they can and can't afford, and creating an agreement there and then making that agreement available to the tenant to be able to look at afterwards once they've probably signed something, so they can get to it on their smartphone and say, what did I agree to again? Mm-hmm. So if they can use technology to a higher degree rather than trundling around with a book full of files and intimidating people, if they can meet them face to face and sort of explain and educate what the benefit system is now, how they should manage it, how that might fit in with their lives, there is a potential positive outcome of it, but it's not an easy situation.
Yeah, is there, I mean, talking about the technology side of things, is there an actual proper app in place now? Because obviously it's a relatively new thing which has been introduced again. Is there apps for the end user of universal credit, or is it teaching people even how to do like online banking and things like that, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. Some people have only ever dealt with cash. They've gone cash to check or been given the cash via a cash machine and spent the cash as and when needed, if they haven't had to look at the rent component of that. So now they've got to take that into consideration as well. So they're increasing their reliance on the the digital world, as it were. There are apps, there are vendors that are coming out within the housing sector that can do predictions on, is this person going to be able to pay? What's their situation, their demographic, etc. It's a big subject, and because at that level in society you're dealing with such a fine line, to some people in society the difference of £100 is nothing. It's a meal out or whatever. But for some people, that £100 is 6 months worth of money.
We're going to see disruption in this area. We are looking at the way in which people handle their finances. There's new banking regs that have come out recently, which not immediately, but are going to change the way in which we all manage our finances. That will make things ever more easier for the individual. It's yet to be proven, and this is all still very much under review. But there are certain housing providers I'm aware of that are looking at ways in which not just they encourage their tenants to pay them on time, but make it as simple and as easy as possible, so that their payments are automated. They don't get them into problems. So, for example, they ensure that there's enough money in their account, or that certain other costs have gone out before any rental payment is taken. Putting the power very much more in the hands of the individual rather than the banks.
Yeah, I mean, we've just briefly as well. So we've mentioned obviously some of the positive side of universal credit. Is there anything that you think actually the reason for introducing it, there is some bad parts to it as well? What would you say to that?
Well, the big one, I can't quite get my head around it, but generally when you hear about universal credit, one of the big issues is that there is a lapse between when someone first gets entitlement to universal credit and when the cash actually hits their bank account. I'm sure there's extremely
6
good
weeks
reasons.
or something like that, isn't it?
Exactly
or
right.
8 weeks, isn't
Exactly
it, for
right.
people to have to change over, right? But
Now, I'm sure there's a good reason for it, but what is it? No one's properly explained it to me. There are some technicalities. But for me, that money is something that an individual is entitled to. So surely there are ways of facilitating it so that problem will go away. Now, at the moment, I don't hear what the answer necessarily is, but if that problem did go away, would we actually be thinking about